I used to believe marriage was built on love. But mine was built on calculation, deception, and profit. I didn't fall in love, I was selected, studied, targeted. By the man I married. By the friend who introduced him to me, someone I trusted. By the system that told me to be quiet, be loyal, be blind. For 5 years, I played my part, until I discovered everything I thought was real, was strategic. This isn't a story about heartbreak. It's a story about survival. About strategy. About how I dismantled the life that was built to trap me, and rebuilt my own from the wreckage. I didn't just survive, I reclaimed my name, my reputation, my identity. I found the woman I was always meant to be. If you think you've heard stories like this before, trust me. You haven't. I think the moment your heart breaks isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just a sentence, overheard in a hallway you weren't supposed to be in, at a time you weren't supposed to be home. Mine was. Marriage is a complete nightmare, bro. I wake up every day regretting my decision. If it wasn't for her family's money, I'd be gone already. I stood frozen in our hallway, suitcase still in hand. That one sentence hit harder than any punch. You know the kind of shock that doesn't let you cry, doesn't even let you blink? That was me. Numb. Hollow. Not even angry. Just, broken in a very quiet way. What's funny, or cruel, maybe, is that I had come home early to surprise him. 3 days earlier than planned. My girl's trip to Sedona had gone great. I'd bought him his favorite local honey, a mug that said "World's Okayest Husband," it was supposed to be a joke, and a bottle of that overpriced bourbon he always pretended not to want but secretly loved. Instead, I got punched in the soul by a truth I wasn't meant to hear. He didn't know I was there. I heard the entire conversation from behind the slightly cracked door to his home office. He was on speakerphone with someone, his voice cocky, casual, like he was just talking fantasy football. Except instead of stats and quarterbacks, he was listing all the ways I'd become his burden. 5 years of marriage. We had just celebrated our anniversary last week. He wrote me a handwritten letter about how I made him a better man. Turns out he must have copied it off Pinterest or ChatGPT or something because nothing, and I mean nothing, was real. I should have kicked the door in. I should have thrown the bourbon at his head and screamed. But I didn't. I quietly left. Not out the front door. No. I slipped back down the hallway, suitcase still rolling quietly behind me, out through the garage. I drove around for 3 hours, shaking, crying in traffic, then parked at a gas station and sat there until my eyes burned. Then I did the most difficult thing of all, I came back home at my normal time, like nothing happened. I greeted him with a kiss. That's the thing about betrayal. It doesn't always explode. Sometimes it simmers. It collects. It watches. And mine? Mine was just getting started. The first night back, I watched him sleep. Like literally just laid there, eyes wide open in the dark, listening to his breathing, wondering how long he'd been lying to me. I counted the ways he must have pretended. Our late-night talks. The way he rubbed my back when I was sick last winter. How he used to brag about my MBA to strangers like he was proud. Or was that just the dollar signs behind my last name? My father is a real estate developer. I grew up in a home where success was measured in deals closed and vacations scheduled. I was the soft one. The emotional one. The one who never quite fit into the cocktail hour conversations about investments and tax shelters. But I was his daughter. And when I married Mark, I thought I was choosing love over legacy. Now I realized, maybe he was choosing the opposite. The next morning, he made me coffee like he always did, almond milk, 1 sugar, just the way I like it. He kissed my forehead and asked about my trip. I lied. Told him it was great. Told him I missed him. Even smiled. He didn't know I was counting every lie like bullets in a loaded gun. The next few days, I went full Oscar-worthy wife. I cooked. Laughed at his jokes. Sent him flirty texts from the next room just to see if he'd squirm. He didn't. He was too comfortable. Too sure. And then I started planning. I wasn't going to leave quietly. Not this time. Not like the last relationship, where I cried on the bathroom floor and let him keep the dog. No. This time, I was going to make sure he knew exactly who he underestimated. I didn't leave. Not yet. I stayed. Slept in the same bed. Cooked the same dinners. Kissed the same man. But every moment I was quietly building something, a strategy. A long game. At first, it was survival. Then it turned into something else, control. The first thing I did was call my father. We hadn't always been close emotionally. He was a man of results, not feelings. But when it came to business, to protection, my father showed up. He listened without interrupting. Not a single breath of "I told you so." Just silence, until he said, "I'll set you up with my attorney. You're going to need a plan." Her name was Sylvia. Sylvia looked like she ate hedge fund managers for breakfast. Gray suit, short hair, eyes like ice. She didn't ask about my emotions. She asked about dates. Paperwork. Passwords. Proof. "We start by protecting what's yours," she said. "And then?" I asked. "Then we take back what he tried to steal." That night, I sat on the couch next to Mark watching Netflix while he scrolled his phone, laughing at TikToks. I was nodding along, sipping tea. He had no idea I was mentally reconstructing 5 years of bank history. I started with our joint account. He always claimed he was too busy to handle bills, so I paid the mortgage. Utilities. Internet. Groceries. His streaming services, for God's sake. He always said we'd even it out. That phrase was in my head like a curse. But it didn't even out. Over the past year alone, I'd paid nearly $34,000 more than he had. I printed statements. Highlighted everything. Categorized it by expense type. Sylvia had given me a template. Then came the real find. Buried in a list of vendor payouts was a strange code, MBH 6449. Looked like a client invoice. But it kept recurring, monthly, identical amounts. I dug deeper. It wasn't a vendor. It was a savings account. Hidden under a business name that didn't exist. The bank account was entirely in his name. The routing number led to a smaller, private financial institution. And the balance? $64,738.42. He had been funneling money there for over a year. While I was downsizing my coffee order to save for our future, he was stacking a secret exit fund. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I printed the statements. Copied them to a flash drive. Gave everything to Sylvia. She looked at the numbers, looked back at me and said, "He's not just dishonest. He's deliberate." And I believed her. I started documenting everything. Not because I needed revenge. But because I needed power. Quiet, strategic, undeniable power. I wasn't leaving yet. But when I did, it would be on my terms. The deeper I dug, the more I felt like I'd been living with a stranger. I was already monitoring Mark's activity. But what I hadn't done yet, and should have, was check his messages. He didn't use the shared laptop much, but he was lazy with logins. One night after he fell asleep on the couch with a beer half-balanced on his chest, I opened the laptop and launched his synced chat app. Most of it was predictable, mean chains, guys from college talking about fantasy leagues. But one chat caught my eye. It wasn't pinned. The name was just Caleb. I hadn't heard that name in years. I clicked. The message history was long. Pages of back and forth stretching years. My stomach twisted. This wasn't a casual acquaintance. This was someone important. I scrolled to the top. The first message was over 6 years ago. Caleb, that's her. The one from the quarterly dinner. The brunette in the green dress. Mark, the real estate guy's daughter? Caleb, yup. Trust me, she's solid. Quiet, smart, probably got access to legacy money. Easy in if you play it right. That was me. The dinner my father invited me to after a long client pitch. I remembered that green dress. I hated that dress. Mark, she single? Caleb, you're charming when you want to be. Get in close. Date smart. Show her stability. You lock this in, bro, and you're set for life. The rest of the thread read like a strategy meeting. Mark giving updates. Caleb giving tips. Mark, she wants to take it slow. Doesn't trust easy. Caleb, that's fine. Play the long game. Show her you're the opposite of her dad. Mark, I told her I want to build something with her. She smiled. We're in. It didn't stop after we got married. The tone changed, got bolder. Mark, her old man's got serious assets. I've seen the trust documents. Caleb, play nice. No prenup breaches. Just build quietly. Let her think she's in control. Mark, got my side stash going. Just crossed $50,000. She still thinks I'm paycheck to paycheck. Every moment. Every memory. It wasn't just betrayal. It was premeditated. A calculated con. And Caleb? That name clicked. I went to LinkedIn. He wasn't just some friend. He worked for my father. Junior development analyst. Promoted last year. My father had no idea. He wouldn't have entertained it if he did. I printed every message. Every screenshot. Copied it all to my flash drive and emailed it to Sylvia. When she called, her voice was sharper than usual. He didn't just marry you for money. He targeted you. I didn't cry. I stared at the screen and whispered. He's going to regret every move he made. I didn't sleep that night. After I read that final message from Mark to Caleb, the one about my father's trust documents, I just sat there in the glow of the laptop screen. Breathing, blinking, trying to stop my body from shaking. This wasn't betrayal. It was invasion. Pre-calculated. Intimate warfare. And Caleb wasn't just an old friend from college. He worked in my father's company. A quiet fixture in meetings. Always polite. Always fading into the background. He saw me once in a green dress at a company dinner. And that was all it took. He marked me. Then offered me up like a business prospect. I should have known. But how do you guard yourself from someone who memorized the mask? I didn't tell Mark anything. Not a word. I went about the next morning like always, coffee, news, a kiss on the cheek. He didn't notice anything different. He never did. But I called Sylvia the moment I got to my car. We met in her office, a glass cube perched high above the city. I slid the flash drive across the table. She read. Took notes. And then? This changes everything. The deception was bigger than we'd thought. The messages between Mark and Caleb weren't just sleazy. They proved premeditation. Malicious intent. If we played this right, it could redefine the entire legal trajectory. He didn't just use you, Sylvia said. He scouted you. She asked for more. Anything I could find. Emails, company ties, timestamps. We were building a case. But we had to stay silent. If Mark suspected anything, he'd get defensive. We couldn't risk him trying to hide assets or erase evidence. So I kept playing the role. Wife. Supportive. Smiling. Even as I watched everything he did like a hawk. That weekend, I scoured more devices. His tablet, his cloud storage. Buried in archived folders were photos he'd taken during holidays, images of my father's office, private documents left on a desk. In messages, they joked about how rich people leave keys under the mat. They laughed. Like it was all a game. I documented everything. And the more I found, the more I realized, I hadn't been living in a marriage. I'd been living in a strategy. I started keeping a journal. But not for therapy. For clarity. For control. I listed every manipulated moment, the trip to Napa. The spontaneous gestures. His proposal on my father's rooftop, something Caleb had suggested months earlier in a message. Every romance was retroactively scripted. And I played the lead. I didn't talk to my father about Caleb yet. Not until we had enough. I knew if I told him too soon, he'd blow everything up. And I needed it quiet. Calculated. Just like them. I wanted Mark to feel it the way I had, slowly, precisely, without warning. So I smiled across the dinner table. And waited. Because now I was the one keeping secrets. The hardest part was pretending nothing had changed. Mark still kissed me goodbye every morning. Still asked if I needed anything from the store. Still left his shoes in the middle of the hallway like he expected someone else to move them. But I didn't flinch. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't change a single thing in my routine. Because the illusion was still useful. Sylvia and I had entered phase 2, asset isolation. She helped me open new personal accounts. Quiet ones, under a different bank, linked to a trust my father had helped create after I turned 25. Money began trickling into that trust daily, and my direct deposits, which Mark never paid attention to, rerouted discreetly. He didn't notice. Of course he didn't. That week I also began pulling records from our joint tax returns. Anything I could find that had his signature on it. Anything that showed he was aware of the money, the benefits, the lifestyle. Because it wasn't enough to prove he married me for money. I had to prove he knew exactly what he was doing every step of the way. At night, I'd walk past him on the couch, smile, and go to bed early. He thought I was tired from work. I was tired, yes. But not from work. From watching every move. From monitoring every message. From collecting lies like sharp stones in my pockets. The tension was building, but he couldn't feel it. Not yet. And I wanted to keep it that way. 2 days later, I received an email from Sylvia with an attachment, Caleb's employment history. Dates of hire, promotions, access logs. It confirmed everything we suspected. He had access to internal files from my father's firm. Sensitive details about real estate deals, financial positions, trust structures. And for over a year, maybe longer, he'd been feeding Mark a pipeline of privileged insight. He wasn't just complicit. He was an architect. Sylvia's reply was short. Almost ready. I began timing things. How long Mark took in the shower. How late he worked out at the gym. How long it took him to respond to Caleb's texts. I wanted to understand the rhythm of his days. The gaps in his routine. Because the final move would require perfect precision. Every lie had to land like a hammer. And every truth had to hit without warning. I even prepared a timeline. Not for him, for me. The day I'd walk out. The day I'd have Sylvia serve the paperwork. The day my father would know everything. Each one marked in pencil, because I wanted to be flexible. But also because I wanted the satisfaction of erasing them, one by one, when the time came. Mark thought everything was fine. He was smiling more. He thought the storm had passed. But what he didn't realize was that I wasn't the storm. I was the silence before it. The following week, I became a ghost in my own life, silent, observant, methodical. I wasn't just collecting proof anymore. I was tying it all together. Sylvia called it closing the loop. She said it like it was routine. But to me, it felt like closing a chapter one hadn't realized I was trapped in. I started with the old storage bin in our closet. One Mark never touched. It held 5 years of receipts, anniversary cards, and random paperwork we never threw out. There, I found something unexpected, a draft of our prenup. One with edits in Mark's handwriting. And on the margin of the asset clause, he had scribbled, negotiate % of trust access, use discretionary language. He had planned this from the beginning. Sylvia's reaction was quick. That note proves intent, she said. We won't need to interpret motive. We'll show it. I made a fresh copy. Highlighted everything. Stored it separately. Redundancy was now my religion. That Friday, Mark had dinner with a client. His phone buzzed on the kitchen island. I usually ignored it. But this time, the name on the screen caught my eye. Caleb, Project Audit. I opened the message. Still on for Sunday? Bring the docs. I'll explain the Cayman option. Cayman. He was hiding more than I thought. Sylvia and I had only been looking at domestic holdings. But now it was clear, he was moving money offshore. Or planning to. Which meant the timeline had to shift. Drastically. The next morning, I drove to my father's cabin 2 hours outside the city. I hadn't been there since the holidays. The air smelled like pine and moss. I needed to breathe something that wasn't strategy. I sat by the fireplace with my laptop and a folder of documents. I reviewed everything from the beginning, the texts, the savings, the photos, the marginalia. It didn't feel like my life. It felt like a case file. I cried. Quietly. Not for him. Not even for me. I cried because I realized how long I'd been acting. Wife. Partner. Supporter. I wasn't any of those things now. I was a witness. When I returned Sunday night, Mark was already asleep. He looked peaceful. That used to make me feel safe. Now it made me feel sick. I stood in the doorway, watching him. And for the first time, I didn't feel fear. I felt nothing. Which is how I knew I was ready. The last piece was simple: schedule the delivery. Sylvia would send the separation papers Tuesday at 9 a.m. My father would receive his sealed report at noon. And I'd already be gone. Not because I was running. But because I'd already won. Tuesday morning was quiet. I was up before the sun. Showered. Dressed. Packed. Everything I needed was already waiting in the trunk of my car. My phone buzzed at exactly 9 a.m. One message from Sylvia. Delivered. He should have it in hand. I didn't linger. I didn't stand in the doorway or glance back at the life I was about to torch. I just closed the front door gently behind me and drove away. Not out of fear. Out of finality. I checked into a hotel downtown. One my father's company used for VIP clients. Quiet, polished, and well removed from our neighborhood. I ordered breakfast. Opened my laptop. 10 minutes later, the calls began. Mark's name lit up my phone like a flare. I didn't answer. He texted, first with confusion. What is this? Where are you? Then, within 20 minutes, panic. We can fix this. You didn't even talk to me. And finally, rage. You're destroying everything. This is insane. You'll regret this. I read each one with the same expression I might give an invoice. Sylvia's next call was short. He called. Screamed. Said you were making a mistake. I told him everything was legally sound. By noon, my father had called to confirm he'd received the full report. He didn't say much. Just. I had no idea. But now I do. I'm proud of you. I hadn't cried when I left the house. But I cried then. Because it was over. At 3 p.m., Mark's tone changed again. Let's talk. Just one call. He still didn't understand. This wasn't about talking. It was about consequences. Around 4:30, Rachel called. She was at my apartment, picking up the final box I'd left behind, mostly clothes, a few framed pictures, a scarf I never wore but kept for sentimental reasons. She said everything looked exactly as I'd left it. "He hasn't touched a thing," she said. "Like he's still expecting you to walk back in." He was still in shock. That was good. I needed him frozen. I spent the evening reviewing our digital logs. Confirming the final transfer of my private funds. Closing old passwords. Canceling unused accounts. Anything tied to him, even loosely, I wiped away. Mark didn't know it, but he was already cut out of every system that once connected us. Phone. Insurance. Tax access. Banking. Health records. Gone. I wasn't just leaving. I was erasing. At 8:15 p.m., the hotel delivered dinner. I didn't eat most of it. But I sat with it, lights low, watching the skyline flicker like a city made of static. That night, I turned off my phone and ordered room service. I sat in a robe, watching a movie I couldn't follow, drinking wine I didn't even like. And still, I felt more like myself than I had in years. Because for the first time since that hallway call, I wasn't reacting. I was choosing. And the war he never saw coming? Had just begun. The next morning, the silence felt louder. I woke up early, not from nerves, but habit. 5 years of tiptoeing around Mark's moods had conditioned me to wake with a jolt. But now? There was no one to perform for. No one to avoid. No one to impress. Just me. It should have felt peaceful. Instead, it felt hollow. Like I'd walked out of a burning building only to realize I didn't know what to do with open air. I didn't respond to any of Mark's messages. Sylvia instructed strict silence. Every communication had to go through her. But he kept texting. "You're doing this because of Caleb? You twisted everything. You don't understand what I was trying to do. You've turned into someone else." Someone else. That part stuck. Because he was right. I had. Rachel came over that evening. She brought Thai food and a bottle of something strong. I was halfway through my second drink when she pulled out her phone. He posted a black square on Instagram. Caption said, "Betrayed by the person I trusted most." He still needed to be the victim. Still needed an audience. I didn't ask her to show me. I didn't need to see it. I already knew the narrative he was trying to spin. But the truth was louder. That night, I sat down with my journal. The one I'd started during the quiet nights when I was still pretending. I flipped through pages of notes, timelines, receipts, quotes. Then I wrote something new. He planned every step. But I survived every second. And now I get to choose what happens next. The next morning, I met Sylvia. She walked me through the next legal stage. Discovery. Depositions. Financial audits. Her tone was calm, but precise. "We're almost there," she said. "But stay silent. He'll try to bait you. That's the only card he has left." I nodded. I wasn't afraid of his anger anymore. I wasn't afraid of anything. Because for the first time in years, I had nothing to lose. And everything to claim. By Friday, the narrative war had begun. Mark had hired a PR consultant. Not a lawyer, someone who crafted optics. Within 24 hours, a gossip blog known for anonymous tips posted a vague story. Prominent heiress blindsides husband in messy split, sources say it wasn't about love. No names, no dates. But enough for people to connect the dots. I sent it to Sylvia. She called instantly. We respond. Not defensively. Strategically. We crafted a counter. Not through tabloids, through financial media. A quiet leak to a reputable outlet outlining a story of trust abuse, financial manipulation, and forged business ties. No names. Just facts. That same afternoon, Caleb's name started trending in industry circles. Within 48 hours, his LinkedIn was wiped. Meanwhile, Mark began spiraling. He emailed my father directly, a groveling, manipulative plea. "You were like a father to me. Don't believe everything you're hearing." My father's assistant responded, "Do not contact this office again." Then came the subpoena. Sylvia had filed the financial misconduct claim quietly. But now it was real. Mark was being legally summoned to disclose all assets, including offshore. We knew he'd delay, dodge, stall. So we hit him again. I authorized the release of one message from Caleb. Just one. The first one. That's her. The one from the quarterly dinner. It was posted anonymously on a women's finance blog. It went viral within hours. The comments were brutal. "This isn't love, it's acquisition. Imagine scouting your own wife." The next day, Mark deleted all his socials. I didn't celebrate. I met with Sylvia again. She showed me the updated timeline. He's lost the narrative. Now we bleed him slowly, legally. I nodded. Let him feel it the way I did. She smiled. Cold. Professional. That's exactly the plan. The subpoena rattled him. Within 72 hours, his attorney filed a delay motion citing emotional distress. Transparent. Weak. Sylvia countered with documentation, secret accounts, falsified invoices, years of deception backed by digital proof. Her tone in court? Measured. Surgical. She dismantled their claims like bones cracking under pressure. Mark retaliated with spin. A press-friendly version of events leaked anonymously, painting him as blindsided, painting me as cold and calculating. We shut it down in hours. Sylvia released one carefully chosen detail to the press, a screenshot of Mark asking Caleb, "How long do I have to keep playing this game?" That line became headline material. The story flipped overnight. And so did public perception. He lost followers. Sponsors. Invitations. The man who once smirked at cocktail parties was now being whispered about with pity, or disgust. Mark's image cracked. But more than that, he was losing grip on the one thing he always controlled, the narrative. And I wasn't done. He contacted Jenna, a mutual friend. Someone who always played it safe. He fed her lines, hoping she'd carry them to me. "He's telling people you staged it. That you're dangerous." I told Sylvia. We hit back. Discovery opened. His offshore activity surfaced. That elusive Cayman account? Real. Active. Hidden through a shell company registered under a high school friend's name. Sloppy. Desperate. Sylvia moved fast. Filed a motion to freeze every cent outside U.S. jurisdiction. He tried to settle, a confidential deal. Minimal payout. NDA. I didn't even need time to think. He doesn't get silence. Not after everything. Sylvia just nodded, flipping to the next page in her binder. Then we go to war. And it felt like we already had. 1 week later, we filed an updated complaint, premeditated financial fraud, marital misrepresentation, and targeted exploitation. The language was brutal, because it had to be. He hadn't just used me. He strategized. Calculated. Hunted. He built his world around the slow erosion of mine. Now? We were dismantling his, document by document, asset by asset, lie by lie. And for the first time, he was feeling what I had all along. Helpless. It took less than 5 days after the updated filing for everything to fall apart. Mark's attorney withdrew. Officially, it was a professional disagreement. Unofficially, he realized the case was unsalvageable. No one wanted to be the face defending a man who'd orchestrated a marriage like a business merger. By the following Monday, subpoenas were issued to his associates, including Caleb. He ignored the first. The second came with a court order. And with it, everything unraveled. Emails. Wire transfers. Calendars. Caleb's testimony, recorded, sealed, but undeniable. He admitted to targeting me. Said it was suggested. Said Mark believed every relationship has leverage if you build it right. He didn't even flinch. Mark, on the other hand, broke. His countersuit was dropped. He went silent publicly. Deleted every trace of his online presence. Friends stopped defending him. Even his own mother refused to give a statement on his behalf. It wasn't a scandal anymore. It was collapse. I stood in court for the final hearing. Mark didn't speak. He didn't look at me. He looked at the table, hands clasped so tight his knuckles went white. The judge reviewed the case summary. A clear pattern of deception, financial misrepresentation, and abuse of trust. Everything I lived through, everything he orchestrated, reduced to 3 sentences on a legal record. But I wasn't angry. I was done. And when the gavel hit the bench, it wasn't the sound of justice. It was freedom. The court dissolved what was left of our marriage in under 10 minutes. But I carried the aftermath longer. For weeks, my body felt like it had been holding breath for years, and was finally exhaling. The silence didn't feel like emptiness anymore. It felt earned. I moved into my apartment near the harbor. 1 bedroom, small kitchen, massive windows. Light flooded the space like it had been waiting for me. I bought myself a bed. A simple one. Then a bookshelf. And a coffee maker that ground beans fresh every morning. I didn't replace everything I lost. I chose what stayed. My father didn't say much. But one night over dinner, after weeks of quiet, he lifted his glass and said, "To my daughter, who sees clearer than I ever taught her." I didn't need his approval. But it still mattered. Sylvia and I parted professionally. But she hugged me. A real one. "You're one of the few who doesn't fold," she said. "Don't forget that." I won't. I thought healing would feel like running through a field. It doesn't. It feels like taking the trash out. Paying bills. Waking up without dread. Laughing at a movie alone and realizing the silence doesn't hurt anymore. And some nights, when I think of the girl in the hallway holding her suitcase, I don't pity her. I thank her. She didn't break. She watched the truth. She made a plan. She fought back. She became me. 1 month later, I took that green dress, the one I wore the night Caleb first pointed me out, and burned it in the backyard of Rachel's place. We drank wine, watched it curl into ash. I didn't need it anymore. Because I wasn't marked by what happened to me. I was made by how I responded. And I was done living in someone else's story. This one is mine now. And I'm just getting started.